All right, so today we're going to be looking at federalism. This can be found in Chapter 4, Sections 1 and 2 in your textbook, pages 95 to 105. All right, so first we want to take a quick look at the difference between a federal, a unitary, and a confederate-style government. Federal government, which is what we have, is the sharing of powers between the two divisions, the federal government, the national government, as well as the state governments. A unitary style government is where there is just the central power that controls all of the local levels as well. The local levels have no authority to act on their own. This is much like how Great Britain has their government set up. Then there's confederate, where the regional power has all the power in the government with a loose central government tying it all together. And that is what we had prior to our Constitution. All right, so under federalism, there are different types of powers. First are the express powers. These are the powers that belong directly to and only to the national government. The reserved powers are those powers that belong only to the states. And then there's the concurrent powers. These are the powers that both the national and the state governments share. Implied powers are what comes in conflict many times with the state governments. It's where the federal government can stretch the Constitution to do what is necessary and proper to carry out their powers. For example, Congress has the power to regulate trade. So it therefore has the elastic clause or necessary and proper power of setting a minimum wage. Likewise, the national government has the power to declare war. In order to have that power, to be able to carry that power out, Congress has the right to raise and support an army, things like draft laws. That is how the implied powers works. Then there's the inherent powers. These are powers that we have, the government has, the federal government has, simply because they are a sovereign nation. In other words, there are just things that they're able to do, such as foreign policy powers, that they can carry out simply because they are their own governing body. Page 97 in your textbook has a really good chart to show how these express powers, reserved powers, and concurrent powers work. But we'll just take a quick look at some of those, starting with some expressed powers. These, again, are the powers that only belong to national government, such as the president's power to enter into treaties, or for Congress to set an import tax on goods coming into our country, regulating interstate trade, in other words, trade between the states, as well as foreign trade, and coining money, and of course, declaring war. Reserved powers, again, are those that only belong to the state governments, such as licenses for professionals, such as teachers, doctors, lawyers. That is a state-by-state license. Establishing schools. The states decide what graduation requirements are going to be. They decide when school is going to go into session, when school will be out of session. All of those decisions are made at a local level. Establishing local governments, such as mayors or city councils, governors, that kind of stuff. Powers that are shared, some of the common ones, is the power to tax. It's kind of that necessary evil in government to have taxation. Without taxes, we cannot make any money. So the state will have taxes, the local governments have taxes, as well as federal taxes as well. Borrowing money in order to operate the government, and then making and enforcing laws. These are some of the most common types of powers that we'll see in the express, reserved, and concurrent. Then there's some things that are denied to the national government, to the state government, as well as denied to both. We'll start with denied to the states. States are not able to tax the government. If you ever see a license plate on a federal vehicle, right there on the license plate it says tax exempt. That is because the states are not allowed to tax the government. States can also not tax a separate import or export tax. Ex post facto are denied to both. An ex post facto law is one that you make a law today and you aren't allowed to punish somebody who maybe broke that law before it was a law, such as maybe today they're going to make a law that makes beards illegal. We can't punish somebody for having a beard yesterday. Taxing exports is denied to the national government as well. There is no taxing of goods leaving our country. The national government is also not allowed to change boundaries. The state of Minnesota has those boundaries put in place, and the federal government can't just come in and decide to make those boundaries different. Neither can deny due process. That is basically when you're arrested, there is procedures that need to take place. You have rights when you are arrested, and the federal government is not allowed, and the state governments are not allowed to deny that due process. Neither can also grant titles of nobility. We don't have kings and princes and lords and ladies, that type of stuff. We have denied that power. And neither the state government nor the national government can deny anybody their rights as given to them in the first 10 amendments of the Constitution in the Bill of Rights. There are some pros to this system. First of all, it permits diversity. Each state has things that are local issues that are unique to them. For example, ice fishing laws in Minnesota make perfect sense, but it wouldn't make sense to have those same types of laws in Florida. It does allow for more participation. You have more local levels of government to have access to, and allows the people to have that close tie and participate in their government, as well as more access to the government. You have right there at the local level, you have your city hall, you have your police force. All those things make it much easier. If you had to go to DC every time you need something from the government, it wouldn't be very effective. And also more experimentation. Every state can kind of decide different laws and different rules and compare themselves to other states and see what types of laws work the best. And this is just a chart that shows how many governments that we have in the United States. You can see that we have, of course, the one federal government. We have the 50 states. And if you look, there are over 87,000 types of local governments around the country. There are some disadvantages. Sometimes it can mask discrimination because the states may have laws that aren't the same as other states and could cause some discrimination. A lot of times there's conflict between what the local people want and what the national government wants, and so those two interests conflict with each other. Makes it difficult to unite when you have so many, 87,000 different governments. Sometimes it's difficult to kind of come together and agree on something. It's also very complex, very difficult, and it's also very costly. Sometimes you don't know where to go in the government, and so it can make it very, very difficult sometimes when you want to have something done. Sometimes law enforcement and justice can be uneven. If you look at this chart here, it shows that you have three different crimes, and if you commit those crimes in the South versus out of the South, you're going to end up spending more time in jail if you commit those same crimes in the South. There are some limitations under federalism as well. First of all, there's something called the full faith and credit. Basically, the states have to respect each other's laws, respect each other's records. So in other words, when you have a driver's license here in Minnesota and you are traveling across the country, your Minnesota driver's license is also good in Texas and Florida and Colorado, etc., because that is a court or given to you by the government. Sometimes states can enter into agreements with each other. That's known as an interstate compact, such as the one that Minnesota and Wisconsin have in regards to college tuition, for example, where you can go to Wisconsin and pay in-state tuition. Both the national government and the state governments must also follow the Constitution. This is known as the Supremacy Clause. And then there's something that's referred to as privileges and immunities. This is kind of like legal discrimination. For example, we can treat people from different states differently, and it is perfectly legal to do so, such as a hunting license, for example. Someone from Wisconsin comes to Minnesota, they have to pay more for their hunting license and fishing licenses. That's because we have the privilege here in Minnesota of hunting for less. We pay taxes, we pay local taxes, we pay income tax, so therefore we get that privilege to hunt for a lower cost. And both the state government and the federal government must guarantee a Republican-style government, which basically means there must be representation. The people must have their representation in government. And there you have it. That is federalism in a nutshell. We will be doing an activity on this in class tomorrow, so make sure you understand all of these words, as well as a quiz that will be following this chapter as well.